Welcome back to an episode of GraysMatter podcast. I'm Justin Grays, and with me today we have Nat.
Hello, my pronouns are they, them.
And Sarah.
Hello, my pronouns are she, her.
And we're picking up from where we were last episode, where we were talking about policing.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the show notes, going to link to last week's episode, of course, and then going to also put in a link to Princess Week's YouTube video about how true crime reveals the corruption and failures of the legal system.
It is a fascinating video, and I am barely a half hour into it.
Yeah, I was very impressed how she was like, oh, we want to do true crime, huh? Well, we're not going to talk about like typical true crime. We're going to talk about how the fact that every true crime story is basically a story about how the police can't actually prevent crimes.
Oh yeah, not at all. Not at all.
And how they just don't do their job when crime does happen.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep seeing people say, I mean, not anybody in our circles, but in other groups, you know, who are you going to call when crime happens? Who's going to protect you whenever something happens? It's like, well, the police do not have a good crime solving rate, and they don't actually prevent crime.
Yeah, I have to imagine that the people who try to use that line of argument have never actually been a victim of crime, because they would know that the vast majority of first of all, the vast majority of crimes are property crimes, and you don't realize that the crime has occurred until it's already happened. And then at that point, all you can do is just make a report, and that's it. Like, make a report, get the insurance, claim the losses if there are significant enough losses. Like, there's nothing else. Like, what do the police need to do in that situation that is unique to their skill set? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So my partner and I drove cross country to my parents' house at Thanksgiving one year. And this was a 17-hour drive the first day and an 18-hour drive the second day, one direction. And we made the drive back, walked into our house, and discovered that someone had kicked in our front door and moved all of our TV stuff around and stolen a bunch of electronics. Now, for perspective, I am a white woman living in a relatively safe part of South Minneapolis. And our insurance company said that it would not be worth putting in a claim for having all of our video games stolen and multiple video game systems, and to have our entire door replaced because they kicked in the door, and not just the frame, the actual door was broken. And insurance wasn't going to cover any of that because it would have been under our deductible. So why should we put in a claim?
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about how the police didn't do anything, because they didn't. We called them and said, hey, should someone come out and like take prints or look around? And they're like, we'll just take the report over the phone. Okay.
Yeah, same thing when my car got broken into, also actually in South Minneapolis when I was still living in the Twin Cities area. I was spending the night at a friend's house. I parked on the street. Someone, smashed through the window, and I didn't keep anything of value in my car, so they didn't even really take anything. So all they did was break my window. Thanks. And I remember that very clearly. There was a very clear as day handprint right on the window next to the window that they broke, because they broke the rear window, and they had braced themselves on the front window with one hand. And I'm like, there's the handprint right there. The cops can come and take a print, and it's perfect evidence. And they don't fucking care, especially if the person didn't actually take anything of value.
Oh yeah. So when I was a teenager, there was this one time someone broke into my dad's house, and all they stole, and they didn't even steal all the money. There was a stack of bills that came to like $20, and they stole about 11 of it. And we're thinking that they just needed.
Wait, they didn't even take all the money?
They didn't even take all the money.
Oh my God.
What we're guessing is that they took what they needed. Either they needed to get some food, or, maybe they needed to get some medications or whatever. They were in debt for something. I don't know. Didn't even figure out who it was. It was cheaper to just replace the lock on the door ourselves than it was to put in the insurance claim. The police came by, took a report, and that was the last we heard of it. And that was just one of the earliest things in my life that highlighted that a lot of crimes are crimes of necessity. Because there was a computer right next to the door that would have been easy to grab and run, and left that even. Just took some money and not even the whole thing.
Yeah, I very much agree with that, but mostly because the statistics also show it. But the people that took our video game stuff took some of our video game stuff, but they left like the TV. So my partner's thought is that they were Christmas shopping for either themselves or their children, and they took the things that they thought would be fun as gifts.
Mm-hmm. That would make sense, yeah.
And also easy to grab and run quickly.
That's
Yeah.
The size of the TV.
And that reminds me of, with police abolition, it's not wholesale across the board completely getting rid of the police. I mean, in some instances it might be, not in all instances. It's taking that money and putting it into housing and basic income and education and food support. I used to work overnight at a gas station, and one night some kid walked in as if they were going to buy something, grabbed 2 pizzas and 2 gallons of milk and ran. And I was like, that is food and milk. It's not like, any of the high price stuff either. It's what that will get somebody through a week or two. I'm sure that they just needed food to get by on. I'm just writing that off because we have no social support at all.
Not effective ones.
Not effective ones, yeah. I mean, we have some.
The shelters are full. The shelters have rules that prevent a lot of unhoused folks from staying in them. It is all tied together, and it is all systemic. And I want to just stand the question 2 on the Minneapolis ballot right now. It's the one that was put on by Yes for Minneapolis, and I've seen a lot of people, including the governor of Minnesota, trash talking this question, saying that it is disrespectful to the police and that it is not the place of the people to make the changes to the charter. And it's all what this amendment wants to do, what this question wants to do, is exactly what you're talking about, Justin. The amendment will free up money to look at things that actually improve public safety that aren't police. That is the entire point of the amendment. Yes for Minneapolis, but yes on question 2.
Well, that is something we definitely need.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, I'm not surprised Tim Walz is saying that it's Governor Tim Walz. Before he was governor, he was U.S. representative, and before he was U.S. representative, it was for the first congressional district. I can't remember if it was before or after. He was also part of the state senate for my area, St. Louis Park, so suburbia. And I mean, St. Louis Park is very liberal, but it's also very white. It's white liberal. So yes, we got Black Lives Matter signs next to thank you police signs in the same yard, even in certain places. So I am not surprised that he's saying, this is a slap against our police.
Yeah, that raises a question for me that I've been kind of like trying to mull over, and it's like, how do we, because we need to have this reallocation of resources. We need to take all this money that's being funneled into policing and put it towards things that actually help people. But as long as we have this cultural fetishization of the police, that's going to be a hard fucking sell, And I've been trying to think about from a real politic, how do we actually get the votes and everything? How are we able to counteract that? What can we do to counteract that? And that's kind of something that I don't have a good answer to yet. I've been thinking about because, even it seems, and I don't know if it's just because political language has gotten more hyperbolic in general in the last decade or so. But it feels like that has escalated, where it used to be even suburban white people would be like, oh, those cops, they just sit around all day, they don't really do anything. There was still a low grade, casual kind of disregard for the cops, and now it seems like they're more revered and fetishized and that kind of thing in a way that they weren't before, and that makes it really damn hard to convince people that no, actually probably shouldn't be giving them as much money as we're giving them.
Just to put a number to that, I looked up right after George Floyd was murdered, there was a big push for the city council to do literally anything. So they took $8 million out of the police budget, leaving $179 million for them to do whatever they want with. I can't imagine the improvements to people's lives I would make if I had $179 million. I've tried thinking, man, if I had that much money, what would I do? And I run out of things at about 50 million.
You know what? When I was saying that Tim Walz was our state senator here for St. Louis Park, for some reason I had his congressional history mixed up with Ron Lantz's congressional history, and I have no idea how I did that. So sorry about that. 2, after they took out that money from the Minneapolis police budget, didn't they put even more money back into it?
They may have. They very well may have. I know that the people's budget didn't pass, which was a proposal put together by a large coalition of progressive groups in the city, led by, was it Reclaim the Block or Black Voices Coalition? Both great groups. Let's put their links in the show notes. It was, and that budget hearing was a shit show. But we're talking about the police.
Yes.
Well, but I don't think that you've gotten off topic necessarily, because that's the whole point, is that in order to fix policing and get a long-term goal of either greatly reducing or eliminating the police entirely from society, you can't just disbar the police and make no changes. That's the worst possible idea. You have to have a broader support system and broader structural changes in place that would basically render the police less obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all about the budgets. That's all about the political system in place. Mostly about the budgets, though.
Mostly. Also to do with what is and is not criminalized.
Yes.
FD Signifier put out today or yesterday a video essay about not dreaming of labor. Or rather, the title is I Don't Dream of Labor May Not Work for Me. And in it, he discusses the concept of the hustle and how that is rooted in Black history and Black culture, and how we've used hustles as a way to survive for so long, and many of our hustles have been made illegal over time because we have been sidelined for so many things. And then a number of movies have been brought up in the process, including an Eddie Murphy movie that I can't think of the name of at the moment, where it shows that, Eddie Murphy's character, went to engineering school, has a degree, knows a lot about electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or something, and can't get hired anywhere and has to do hustles and cons to survive and, take care of his wife and take care of his mother or mother-in-law. That relationship's not made very clear. And how the system is set up so that we are given fewer and fewer choices until the point where we end up in the school to prison pipeline because we have no choices or no good choices. Do we get to get the education, get to eat, get to be productive, get to have time for ourselves so that we could rest and heal and play, or will we just continue to struggle and find other ways to make ends meet and have to deal with things that are high risk, high reward, and end up back in the clutches of the police, who are only there to protect the interests of the capitalist class?
Once you're put into the prison system and in prison, then your labor can be exploited for basically free.
Oh, yeah.
Modern slavery.
Yep. Slavery, and it's constitutionally allowed.
There's that meme that keeps running around that's how some Alabama state institution building is cleaned by pretty much exclusively Black prisoners, and how that's, quote, the good job.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty disgusting.
I have not seen that. If you could put that in the Discord, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll go looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is this idea, because that, if you want to be unhelpfully generalizing, everything is a social construct, but crime is a social construct. The idea of what is considered illegal and what is considered legal, even up to and including murder, is a social construct, because murder is just killing someone when it's not sanctioned by the state. If it's state sanctioned, it's not murder. That's a social construct.
Yes. I was just thinking about that, actually. More in regards to the military.
They are, I feel like, two prongs of the same.
Oh, they are, definitely. I was seeing articles about 13 service members killed in Afghanistan, and the headlines conveniently left out the 100+ civilians that were also killed. And I also thought about, on top of my thinking about how it conveniently left out from the headline the 100+ civilians that were also killed, how many civilians not only has the United States military killed throughout the what, 235 years of conflicts we've been in, but also what we as the United States were doing to get the Russians out of Afghanistan after what the Russians were doing to get the United Kingdom out of Afghanistan. Because the United Kingdom was playing their great game. Because imperialism.
Was their great game opium?
Almost
Or
certainly.
was that a different game?
Well, I mean, opium was China. It might have also had to do with Afghanistan.
It's definitely there now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people today don't even mention that we're there because the Russians were there, because the United Kingdom was there, because imperialism. Now it's just, well, we're there to protect.
I mean, even bringing it back domestically, state-sanctioned violence. If you look at the Supreme Court precedents that have been set, that provides such an extreme amount of leeway for what is allowed violence by the police. Basically, if they can just say, I feared for my life, that's like the magic words that allow them to take someone's life for pretty much no reason, as long as they can claim that in their minds they thought that they were afraid, which is a standard that, of course, the regular civilian, by and large, does not have.
Oh, yes.
And it's a standard that the civilian is expected to cater to when
Yes.
police approach them, because it's not terrifying at all to have 3 people point guns at you in uniform, and you're supposed to stay calm. You're supposed to be rational. You're supposed to do exactly what they tell you when they're telling you to do 4 conflicting things. And you'll be okay if you do that.
Except when you do that and they shoot you anyway.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're just asleep in your own bed.
Yep.
And the military is related to the police in that, like, so many service members come home and that's what they do. Like, that's the job they take because that's the skill set they have. And they bring that military mindset to a civilian setting, which only makes everything more polarized, higher stakes, and worse.
Well,
And often using the military equipment that they also had, well, not exactly, but almost the same military equipment they had when they were deployed.
I'm pretty sure that they get military surplus.
They do. A lot of it is, and it also depends on the department. Some get more than others.
I think I said last episode about how recruiters will go to lower income schools to entice people to come and join the military. Because
You talked about that.
that's another thing about joining the police. You don't need an education to join the police outside of having a high school diploma. And this varies state to state. Because I think in Minnesota you need some college now. I should know this. I have applied to be a police officer in the state so many times.
I believe that that CPD does require a bachelor's, but they don't specify what type of bachelor's. But I will have to fact check myself on that.
Yeah.
I pulled up the wearthebadge.org, becoming a Minnesota peace officer requirements. 1, complete pre-service education and training. You can obtain a 2 or 4 year degree or certificate. Apply for and pass the peace officer licensing exam and meet the peace officer training standards and be appointed by a law enforcement agency.
I was able to apply because I have a bachelor's and an associate's and work experience. So all I would have to do is go to the academy, which is, I don't know, a couple weeks, and pass the post exam, the police officer's standard. I forgot what the T stands for. And then, boom, police officer.
Training.
Police officer standard.
T stands for training.
Yes.
I have fact-checked myself. The CPD requires 60 semester hours. I haven't done the math to figure out if that's, so not necessarily a degree, but you do need to have 60 semester hours unless you've served 3 years of active duty in the military. So again, there's that military to police pipeline.
60 semester hours, I believe that is an associate's.
Okay.
It's approximately 4 semesters, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, but I don't think you necessarily have to have ended those semester hours with a degree because a degree is not specified. Just, have attended.
Yeah. And my bachelor's is in gender studies and my associate's is in liberal arts. So, I don't have a degree in law
a theater
enforcement.
degree.
And granted, having a degree in gender studies would probably be helpful as a peace officer in certain ways, being able to better understand, communicate with people, helping the community. But it also doesn't give me the years of experience and training needed in conflict resolution, de-escalation, the stuff that's really needed.
Can we talk about that actually? The different things that police are called upon to do that aren't, quote, stopping crime, unquote.
So like 90% of what they do?
Yeah, like what are these things, and do they require police training?
I was on a ride-along a couple years ago. We made exactly 3 stops. Stop number 1, there was a dog loose. We were trying to coax it into the car. We had to leave to continue the patrol and left the CSO, the community service officer, to deal with it. It was late, so it was just a couple of police officers and the CSO on duty. Stop number 2, there was a person parked in the bike lane with their hazard lights on. Just checked to make sure that they were okay. They were helping somebody into a building. That was it. Stop number 3. We got a call. Someone was saying that their upstairs neighbor was making a lot of noise and that something about being spied on or something. We get there, and the person who made the call was having a mental health episode and needed to see a psychiatric professional of some sort, get some psychological help. We could tell by the things that she was saying, not about the people who are upstairs, but the people who were upstairs, like spying on her or something. I don't remember the full details anymore. It was years ago, but it was obvious that she needed help that the police weren't able to give because it was a mental health issue and not the people upstairs are bothering me issue. And police aren't trained for that and aren't expected to deal with that. Or they are expected to deal with that, especially since after the sanatoriums were shut down and everyone was put on the streets, we turned jails into mental health / homeless shelters. And so here we are.
So it sounds like that first stop should have been handled by animal control.
Yeah, but I'm in a suburb. We don't really have animal control.
Maybe if you defunded your police, you would.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Or maybe if the county provided one and all the suburbs chipped into it.
Right. And then that second stop probably didn't need to be handled by someone with a gun, at the very least.
Yeah.
Maybe like a dedicated traffic officer rather than someone who's carrying a deadly weapon to check and see if someone is okay.
Yep.
And the third one, like you're saying, needed medical professionals that weren't called, it sounds like. What did the officers do? Do you remember?
Well, we talked to her for a bit and suggested that she talk to her landlord in the morning, and that was about all we could do.
You couldn't call in a backup EMS?
No, because she wasn't showing any signs of being in crisis and just needed to talk for a while.
At this point, I should probably make the disclosure that one of my partners actually is a police officer. We were dating for 10 years before he became one, so just throwing that out there. But he's actually working in a division that is currently devoted to trying to figure out better ways to handle those kinds of mental health situations, which is particularly tricky because the law doesn't know how to handle people with mental health issues. For example, if someone's having a psychotic break and they need to go into, they need to receive help, they are by definition not necessarily in a state where a mental state where they recognize that they need that help. But at the same time, you don't want to have a situation where it's super easy to have someone involuntarily committed. So what do you do? So, for example, using to use the situation that Justin brought up, this woman, while she believed things that were objectively not true, she wasn't imminent danger to anyone. So in that case, all you can, she legally speaking, and I would also argue in this case, morally speaking, the answer is just give her a recommendation. Hey, you should probably talk to somebody and then leave. Because, grabbing her and throwing her in an institution just because she thinks someone above her is spying on her, but she's not taking any dangerous or violent actions because of that belief, And
that ties into the healthcare system, which is another kind of fuss.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine posted today, she saw a picture that's been spreading around on the Facebooks and the Reddits since 2016, this specific image. Skin-to-skin contact after a C-section. So, a baby post-C-section being able to be held by the parent. It was under $40 for medical fees for that particular part of it. And my friend said, is this true? Because that is wild. Well, she used stronger language than that, but I'm trying to also excise certain words from my vocabulary. And someone else popped in and said, yes, it's true because you have to have another nurse there because of the anesthesia and the other things that go into a sterile environment that has to do with a C-section. And, I had been reading, the posts and the comments. So that person got to it before me. And I was like, yes, that is correct. But that also goes into a deeper issue of our healthcare system in general. So yes, the $40 charge for having the extra nurse in there for the skin contact makes sense in that, yes, it's important to have that extra nurse for this scenario. But a C-section in the United States on average costs like $22,000 and can go upwards of $58,000, while the United States also has a maternal mortality rate of 19 deaths per 100,000 on average, which is a misleading statistic because for women of color, especially non-Hispanic, Black, and Indigenous women, it's closer to 50, I believe that number was, with deaths per 100,000, whereas I believe Australia, Switzerland, and the UK were all less than $10,000 for C-section and have a maternal mortality rate of 7 or less. In the United States, we pay so much and die instead of getting help, is the point I'm getting at.
Gee, that sounds awfully familiar to police departments, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
$179 million. What do you do with $179 million?
I mean, as a city or as a person?
What would you do with $179 million?
I would pay off my student debt. I'd pay off the student debts of all my friends and my family.
Are you willing to talk numbers? Like, how much would that go through?
I don't know. I lost track. Hold on. Let me just go into the Blogonets. Oh, no. Okay. Let's see here.
I was lucky enough to not take out loans for college, so I'm not quite sure what average student debt is.
Yeah, I did take out loans, but I was, I had a lot of economic privilege going in and coming out because I got a good paying job like right away. So I think I have like $2,000 left. So it's like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. The 0% interest rate, I'm not in a hurry to pay it off.
Sure.
But pay off my mortgage. Let's see, I'd pay off my friend's student debt too, and my Metamore student debt. I could probably spend, I'm gonna say like, I could spend like $5 million pretty easily, and then I'd run out of stuff that I really wanted to do.
Right?
Yeah. Then the rest I would say like, okay, I'm going to give this to or set up a foundation to just like give money to people. They can come and be like, I need money because I am unhoused. And they're like, okay, here you go.
Don't get me started on foundations right now. That's a bad idea.
Do you work in
the nonprofit industrial complex is a mess.
Here we are. My student loan debt is now up to $76,258.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, so that's less than $100,000 out of $179 million to pay off your student debt. I'm not trying to minimize your debt. Your debt is real, and I
totally
desperately hope that you pay
the real point is like that is an obscene amount of money, and yet a police department is still getting so much that's a drop in the bucket. That's like the point.
Yes, it is.
I'm trying to
what are they
how
doing
much they took out in the first place.
I mean, they are paying some really damn good salaries, and that's why a lot of people join the police, because it is one of the last well-paid unionized jobs that's available to people without a college degree.
There's a whole other bucket of systemic issues.
For school, I went to community college, and then for my associates, I went to Minneapolis Community and Technical College. And then for my bachelor's, I went to Metropolitan State University. So, community college and state college. And that was still $60,000 for university. And then nothing but interest. Oh, and I've paid on this quite a bit. I don't remember how much. And I'm trying to navigate this website to know how much because it's confusing.
Would paying off your student debt do more for your personal safety than a police officer?
Yes. I wouldn't have to worry about... Let's see. Then I'd only have medical debt to worry about. I would be more secure. Wouldn't have to worry about the government garnishing my wages anymore. And then I would be able to put money away for stable housing. Not have to worry about someone just coming in and taking away my home again. I mean, worry about it happening again, not worry about someone doing it again. I haven't had that happen yet, but I've had someone try. Be more secure when it comes to eating, not be as stressed anymore, which should do wonders for my blood pressure. I don't know, it might help some of the other chronic pain I have, it might not. Those all are tied in such intricate ways, it's impossible to tell. Might even be able to save up and buy a car one day. It'd be nice to be able to, rely on myself to get from here to work and not have to hope that there's nothing that happens with the transportation that I have to arrange. Especially since bus service right now I'm working from home because of the pandemic. But say work forces us back to the office. Bus ride from my place to my workplace, round trip is 3 to 4 hours. Round trip driving is 35 to 40 minutes.
Yeah, we could spend some of that $100 million on better public transit systems.
Oh yeah. There's no direct suburb to suburb transit. I have to take 3 buses there and 2 buses back if I catch the right buses. And if I miss one bus, that's it. I just miss work for the day. And I don't even have to miss the bus because it's my fault. I could catch the first bus and then the transfer just arrived early. Or my bus got to the stoplight, and then I'm screwed because that's the last bus out of downtown Minneapolis to my workplace. If I don't want to arrive 2 hours early, which I don't want to do because I don't want to leave my house before 6 a.m. in the first place, since my job doesn't start until 9 a.m.
The improved public transit, debt relief, and I'm certain you're not the only person who would benefit from those.
Oh, yeah.
The city could be investing this money in amazing people like you instead of funding the state murder of people like you.
Yep, it could if it really wanted to.
Yeah, but you score easy political points when you say, I support the police. Like that, this goes back to what I was thinking about earlier, is like, how do you knock the police off their pedestal for the wider public? Like, obviously, ACAB is a very popular slogan amongst leftist circles already. So, like, that's not the issue. Because, like, on their surface, like, you would think that this would be an easy sell, but it's becoming harder than I had hoped it would be.
See, Communities United Against Police Brutality is another org I will throw in here for linking. And they are doing a lot of good work around this and a lot of organizing around this. They know what works at this point, is my understanding. And MPD 150 also has a list of non-police resources. Like, that's what I'm focusing on, is trying to give people resources that aren't the police. Like, if we can call the sexual violence center instead of the police when there's an episode, then they can actually, help. Or if you can call, I'll get the list.
Or hell, if there's just like a municipal non-emergency line for when you come home and you find that your house was broken into, but the person's no longer there, and then they can...
Fun fact. When you call the non-emergency line for that, they tell you to hang up and call 911.
Yeah, I know. That's what they do now. But I'm saying we could make it so that you can call the non-emergency line because there is no emergency. It's already happened.
Did I ever tell you about the first time I got pulled over?
Oh dear, no.
So I was 21. I was driving home from a friend's place. We had been playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was in Brooklyn Center. I was stopped at a red light, and there was this really dark shadow next to my car. And I looked at it, and I was like, I think that's a police car. What are they doing in a turn lane with all of their lights off, both interior and exterior? That is really dangerous, being in the turn lane. Someone might hit them. That's weird. The light turned green. I started accelerating. Cop turned on all their lights and pulled me over. And I was like, well, there's no way I did anything because the light just turned green. And the cop had a lot of time to do anything before the light turned green while I was sitting there next to him. So looked at my license and insurance card and ran it and came back and said that he pulled me over because the light over my license plate was burnt out. It wasn't, but he said it was. And that's why he pulled me over.
Talk about making things not illegal anymore.
The second time I got pulled over was in Bloomington. The police were tailgating me something fierce. And I was like, I gotta move over a lane. So I sped up a little bit so I can get over a lane. And Then they turned on their lights. Like, this is entrapment. What's going on here? And they started asking me questions, and they noticed that I had a white guy sitting next to me after they asked me where I was going. And then they let me go because I had a passenger. It's like, okay, good thing I had you with me, because they had nothing, and so anything could have happened. So yeah, those were my first 2 times being pulled over by the police.
Just the first 2.
Just the first 2. Oh yeah, so that's fun.
So I just threw the MPD 150 resources page into our show notes channel. There are more resources on abolition, defunding, and experiences with the police on that page than I have ever seen gathered anywhere ever. Both for Minnesota-specific and national police abolition and police restructuring resources. It's absolutely incredible, and I highly encourage people to read, get educated. This is out here for you.
Yeah, we can definitely live in a world with fewer police. Even medium-sized cities like Minneapolis can have smaller police forces, and we know what that would look like. They would look like suburban police forces, because in predominantly white middle-class areas, there are fewer police who don't over-police the way that certain other agencies do, because they don't have to. That's not what they're there for.
I grew up in a town that has been hailed as the safest in California for more than 1 year. Actually, the entire state of California. And we used to joke that the cops would hang around the high school to try and catch speeding teenagers because they had literally nothing better to do. It's like that could be what the police looks like here.
I mean, I would prefer they don't even do that. You know, like, we don't even need that.
Considering that most of modern policing in the United States is a descendant of slave patrols, yeah, we really don't need them to do that.
Yeah, on the one hand, I do get I get the concept that, like, yeah, it'd be a good stepping stone towards total abolition is be try to aim more towards suburban police, but those suburban police are still nasty as hell towards people who aren't white. So, like, I mean, Brooklyn Center, that's a suburb. Those police are not good.
Yep.
Even those police around Dante Wright.
Yeah, exactly. Or around where I am in the Chicago suburbs, there is a Chicago suburb. I have to admit that I'm very provincial in the sense that I hardly ever go to the suburbs, so I can't remember which one. There is a suburb of Chicago that is so infamous for how zealously the police enforce traffic violations that gas stations will sell T-shirts saying, "I was pulled over by the so-and-so police." So suburban police definitely are not a model of ideal policing is all I'm going to say. And I'm sorry for being actually contrarian.
Oh no, definitely. Like
I think we're
Edina
all on
police,
the same page here.
when they totally mishandled that jaywalking incident a couple years ago, and then the Edina City Council went into hiding instead of confronting.
I remember that.
I am with this story. Could you elaborate on it?
I can.
So
yes.
there was. Do you have an article up, or
I will in a moment.
Okay. Edina is a very wealthy suburb of Minneapolis. It is a first-ring suburb, and it is heavily gentrified and very white. And it's also a high-traffic suburb, so there's a lot of people who aren't white who go there to work or to pass through or to do other things like shop at Michael's. This turns into nasty situations sometimes.
So this happened in 2016. Was it really that long ago?
Time is also
It was before, I think it was before Philando Castile was shot.
Oh, wow. So in 2016, and I have a Star Tribune article about it, which does have a paywall. So I'll also find an NPR article about it. Minnesota Public Radio, which is part of Public Radio International, National Public Radio. But gentleman was walking in Edina, and Edina police maintained that this man, Larney B. Thomas, was defiant and didn't stop when asked to by a police officer. This was filmed by Janet Rawls, and that what was happening was that this man was walking in on the white line dividing the road shoulder and the traffic lane because the sidewalk was under construction. And the plainclothes police officer who had stopped him, Lieutenant T.F. Olson, grabbed the back of Thomas's jacket, and things became escalated as Thomas, the man who was walking, became agitated and asked why he was being detained. And Olson, the police officer, had him put his hands on the car. And things just kept escalating from there as the police, stopped a man from walking in an area where we walk when the sidewalk is closed for construction. And then the Edina City Council just decided not to deal with it at first.
Wait, oh, okay, yeah. There's so many, there's, to use the modern parlance, there's a lot to unpack there.
Oh, yeah. When I was in high school, class of 2001, there was a phrase that was branded about that Edina stood for, every day I need attention. And it was because Edina was flush with cash, just too rich and not enough sense. And that just seems to be true still.
Oh, it is. It definitely is.
Oh, yeah.
That brings up the other issue. Can we not have plainclothes police officers in unmarked cars, like just wandering around? I don't like it.
Yeah, me neither.
Like it's such, like, I kind of understand the idea. It's like, oh well, if they know we're cops, then they'll stop doing the crime. It's like, well, yeah, we want them to not do the crime. So, and also this is like, like if some random person just comes up to me and is like, hi, I'm a police officer. Like, my first response will be like, no, fuck you. You're trying to like assault me, or you're trying to scam me or something. It just increases paranoia and distrust. It doesn't make people feel safer. Like, I still freak out every time I see a fucking Ford Explorer, whatever the hell the SUV type that CPD uses. Like, they have a shit ton of unmarked cars going around, and it's always the same SUV type. And so every time I see it, even when it's not an unmarked car, I'm like, eh.
Oh, yeah. Undercover, or plainclothes at least, plainclothes police is one of the reasons why I moved out of St. Paul. One day I was walking home from the bus stop, and I walked by a vehicle, had two plainclothes cops in it, that had their badges hanging from chains, like on TV, around their necks. I was like, that's some TV shit right there. That's odd. And I passed another vehicle with cops in there dressed like that. And a third. And I said, fuck that noise. I'm not living here anymore. I'm moving back to my old neighborhood. I don't need this. Because I just immediately, I'd already felt sketchy about the neighborhood for other reasons, and incredibly frustrated about the mass transit situation there, because it was really hard to catch a bus to get to school and back. And that was the last straw. Seeing cops out of television in real life, and I was done.
And a lot of them like to think they're like the cops on television too, and they act like it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that it's a shame cop procedurals are so entertaining, because they probably do a lot for that deification you were talking about.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's the CSI effect.
Oh, yes. Where juries place more, or they believe things about methods of evidence that aren't true because they saw it on CSI.
Yep. That came up, actually, at when I was on jury duty a couple years ago. We were asked if we had watched shows like CSI and Law and Order and such, and then I asked if they were talking about things such as the CSI effect. And said, well, yes, essentially. I was like, yeah, I'm aware of that, and I know that it's just a TV thing. That really does mess with people's perceptions of what is real and what is not, and it's devastating.
For example, good cops are not real.
Yeah, well, the good cops that are there tend to not be cops for long, because then they're either, they're taken off the force, or the force sounds militaristic. So I'm going to say force anyway.
I mean, that's what they call themselves.
Yeah, I'm not trying to disparage your partner, and I do apologize. I spoke before I thought. I hope that they're long enough to make a good cop a real thing.
I mean, honestly, I don't bother fighting it. I'm like, to me, it's not equivalent, but I view it similarly to the, like, fuck white people or all men are trash or those types of rhetoric, where I understand that it's a cathartic sort of, invective. And so I understand the reasoning behind the statement, even though, and I understand I'm not going to take it personally.
By the time this episode is out, I plan on putting up on Patreon, on my Patreon, that is, my thoughts of what would have happened to me if I did somehow become a police officer in one of these alternate universes. And in there will be links to information on some other police officers who were good cops and what happened to them, including one fellow who was shot and essentially left for dead by his fellow police officers because of police corruption that he tried to blow the whistle on. So I'll be sure to put that in the show notes if I have it written up in time.
I'm certainly interested in reading it, even if it's just like a...
Oh yeah,
just
I'll
a
put it in the
small
Discord
something
as
you
well for
Real
Oh.
person fan fiction.
Well, there are hours and hours and hours more to talk about this, I'm sure. But we've been going for a while.
Yeah, we've been going for about an hour so far here. I think we should call this a wrap and remind people
Yeah, I
to
think I need some chocolate.
look into MPD 150.
Also something to look into with regards to police, because they, I'm pretty sure they had an agreement among their administration that they wanted to cut ties with the MPD, and that never materialized.
Probably. My earliest exposure to police that I can remember is through going to school with Minneapolis Public Schools as part of the junior police program. If I can find any information on that, I'll put it in there.
Dang.
Yeah, they had a police minivan. Though I support there being a police minivan in that it takes away from the militaristic aspects and more of the community building.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's so like, hey, to try to build, hey, let's find ways to work together, peaceful presence. This is not a vehicle meant to chase people. And let's teach about safety things that the police are designed for. And we can get into what that is later. But use it more as a community-based thing for what parts of policing are needed as we continue to divest policing from things that don't need to have a police presence. So as we remove housing from policing and mental health from policing, and then, leave the tanks to the military, leave the armored vehicles to SWAT for the extreme circumstances where they actually might need one, but don't give it to the everyday police departments, and make it less paramilitary and more community.
Amen.
Well, on that note, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night,
Have a police
Justin. Good
apologize.
night, Nat.
Good night, Sarah. Good night, Justin.
Good night, everybody.